What would you do if your neighbor demanded that you hand over your car, just because they felt they deserved it more than you? I never thought a quiet Sunday morning would turn into a battle over something that was rightfully mine. It started like any other weekend. I had just come back from one of my long drives, the only real escape I had from the noise and stress of city life. My job was draining, my apartment complex felt suffocating, and these solo road trips were the one thing that kept me sane. I pulled into my usual parking spot, feeling that rare moment of peace as I turned off the engine. That peace didn't last. The sharp click-click-click of heels on pavement made me turn my head. Karen. I recognized her instantly. Everyone in the complex did. She was the type of person who always had a complaint, a demand, or a problem that somehow wasn't hers to fix. The trash pickup was too slow. The parking spaces weren't wide enough. The neighbors were too loud. The HOA board always seemed to bend to her will, probably just to get her to stop yelling. And today, it was clear she had set her sights on me. She strode toward me, sunglasses perched high on her head, her designer coat cinched tightly around her waist like she was walking the streets of Manhattan instead of a mid-range apartment complex parking lot. I barely had time to take my keys out of the ignition before she stopped a few feet away, arms crossed, eyes locked on my car. "That's a really nice ride," she said, her voice dripping with something that wasn't quite admiration. I nodded, unsure where this was going. Thanks. She tilted her head, looking me over like she was trying to size me up, like she was calculating something. "It's just funny," she continued, her tone as sweet as artificial sugar, how some people have things they don't actually need. My brow furrowed. Excuse me? She sighed dramatically, as if this conversation was already exhausting her. I'm just saying, a car like this, it's a luxury, you know? And I happen to be in desperate need of a vehicle right now. There it was. The uneasy feeling that had been creeping up my spine settled into something solid. I didn't like where this was going. Okay. She smiled, but there was no warmth behind it. See, my son, Tyler, just turned 16. And he really needs a car. There was a pause. So I was thinking it would be really wonderful if you donated yours. I blinked. Donated? Her expression didn't change. Yes. You know, gave it to someone who actually deserves it. For a second, I let out a short laugh, convinced this had to be some sort of bizarre joke. But the second I saw the serious look on her face, the amusement drained from me. You want me to just give you my car? For free? She tooted, waving a manicured hand. For Tyler, she corrected, as if that somehow made her request any more reasonable. You don't need something this nice. What do you even do for a living, anyway? That was it. My jaw clenched, and irritation flared inside me. I wasn't about to stand here and justify my own property to someone who had no business questioning me. I work, I said flatly. I saved up. I bought it. That's how it works. She scoffed. Oh, come on. You look what, mid-20s? You don't have kids, no family, nothing real to care for. Meanwhile, I'm a struggling single mother trying to give my son a good life. You have no idea how hard it is raising a teenager. She crossed her arms tighter, eyes narrowing. Tyler deserves this car way more than you do. Her voice had lost all pretense of sweetness. Now, it was sharp. Entitled. I took a slow breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Look, I get it. You want what's best for your son. But that's not my problem. I'm not giving away my car just because you think I don't deserve it. Her fake smile vanished. Her jaw tightened. Wow. So selfish. I was about to turn and walk away when she suddenly stepped closer, her posture shifting into something aggressive. I don't think you understand, she hissed, her voice dropping low. You don't need this car. Tyler does. I'm trying to do what's best for him. You can afford another one. I stared at her, trying to process just how delusional she was. That's not how this works. You don't just demand someone else's property because you think you deserve it more. Her lips curled into a sneer. People like you don't appreciate what you have. You just hoard things while hardworking parents like me struggle to give their kids opportunities. But fine. Be selfish. Just know that I won't forget this. She spun on her heel and stormed off, her heels clicking furiously against the pavement. I exhaled, shaking my head as I pulled my keys from my pocket, thinking that was the end of it. I had no idea that this was just the beginning of the nightmare she was about to put me through. I didn't think much about Karen after that conversation. Sure, she was entitled, delusional even, but I figured she'd eventually get over it. People like her always found something else to complain about. So, I went about my routine, chalking the whole thing up as another bizarre encounter with the most self-important woman in the complex. But then things got weird. Over the next few days, I noticed her watching me, not in a casual, passing by kind of way, but deliberate, calculated. Every time I walked to my car, she was nearby, standing by the mailbox, pretending to scroll through her phone, lingering by the leasing office as if she had business there. At first, I ignored it. Maybe it was all in my head. Maybe she was just being nosy. But the feeling of being watched never faded, and then, one night, I came home later than usual, exhausted from work, just wanting to shower and collapse onto my couch. But my car was gone. For a moment, I stood there in stunned silence, my brain refusing to process what I was looking at. I always parked in the same spot, assigned space, second row, third from the left. It wasn't there. My pulse spiked as I scanned the lot, hoping, praying I had somehow been an idiot and parked somewhere else without thinking. But I knew better. It was stolen. I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking as I dialed 911, trying to stay calm as I explained to the dispatcher what had happened. Within 20 minutes, a patrol car pulled up, red and blue lights flashing against the pavement. The officer stepped out, took notes, and asked me if I had any suspicions about who might have taken it. I didn't even have to think. Karen. It was too much of a coincidence. First, she demanded my car. Then, she called me selfish for refusing to give it to her. And now, just days later, it's missing? The officer raised an eyebrow when I told him, asking if I had proof. That was the problem. I didn't. Just my gut feeling and common sense. He assured me they'd check security footage from the complex and file a report, but I could already feel the frustration boiling in my veins. If Karen had taken it, there was no way in hell I was letting her get away with it. The next morning, I decided to do some investigating of my own. I casually walked past Karen's unit, pretending I was heading to the mailbox. Her own car sat in its usual spot, but something felt off. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it, a small crack in her garage door. My pulse spiked. I slowed my steps, pretending to check my phone as I glanced inside. There. My car. The sleek black paint, the license plate, the small dent on the bumper from when some idiot rear-ended me last year, it was unmistakably mine. A mix of rage and disbelief crashed over me. She hadn't even tried to hide it properly. She had the audacity to steal my car and park it in her own garage like it belonged to her. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay calm. This wasn't the time for rash decisions. I pulled out my phone, took a quick photo as proof, and called the police again. When the officer arrived, I led him straight to the garage, explaining everything in clipped, furious sentences. He knocked on Karen's door, and for a long moment, nothing happened. Then, finally, the door creaked open. And there she stood. Smug. Smirking. As if she had already won. I didn't know what I was expecting. Maybe an attempt at denial. Maybe a pathetic excuse. But Karen didn't even try to hide it. The officer asked if she knew anything about the car in her garage, and without hesitation, she spun the most absurd story I had ever heard. Oh, officer, thank goodness you're here. I was so worried about that car, it was just sitting in the parking lot for days, completely abandoned. I was afraid someone might steal it, so I moved it into my garage for safekeeping. You know, to protect it. The audacity left me speechless. She spoke so confidently, so convincingly, that for a split second, I almost thought she might actually believe her own lie. But the officer wasn't buying it. You're saying you took this car for safekeeping without notifying its owner? Without permission? Karen's fake concern melted into irritation. Oh, come on. This guy can afford another one. He has no family, no kids, no real responsibilities. Meanwhile, I'm a single mother doing everything I can to provide for my son. Tyler needs this car, he deserves it way more than he does. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't just delusion, this was actual insanity. The officer turned to me, shaking his head. This is a clear case of vehicle theft. We're going to need you to step aside, ma'am. Karen's expression twisted into pure rage. She pointed a shaking finger at me. This is ridiculous. I was doing a good thing, and this is how I'm repaid? You people always side with the selfish ones. You're all the same, never thinking about the struggling mothers who actually need help. Then, just when I thought this circus couldn't get any worse, she pulled out her phone and dialed 911 ***. I watched, stunned, as she locked eyes with me and, with pure venom in her voice, said, if the police won't punish you for stealing from me, I'll make sure someone else does. My pulse spiked. She was framing me. The officer beside me remained calm, watching her with the kind of patience that only came from dealing with entitled people far too often. Karen, now in full performance mode, paced in front of her door, her voice trembling. Hello? Yes, I need help. I'm being harassed by a man who won't leave my property. I'm scared for my safety. He's threatening me, The officer beside me finally sighed and cut her off. Ma'am, we are already on scene. Attempting to manipulate law enforcement will not work in your favor. The second those words left his mouth, her expression snapped from fake fear to pure fury. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The look Karen gave me as the officer shut her down was pure, unfiltered hatred. She wasn't used to losing, and she definitely wasn't used to being told no. But this wasn't some HOA meeting where she could bully people into getting what she wanted. This was real life with real consequences, and for the first time, she had been caught. But people like Karen don't back down. I had my car back, but something deep in my gut told me this wasn't over. And I was right. The next morning, I woke up to an email from my boss. Hey, Ryan, can you come in early today? We got a concerning call about you, and I'd like to clear it up. A knot tightened in my stomach. I had a sick feeling I already knew exactly where that call came from. When I got to work, my manager sat me down, looking uncomfortable. He explained that a woman from my apartment complex had called in, claiming I had been harassing her and making threats. She wouldn't give her name, but she insisted she was concerned for public safety and thought my employer should be aware of my behavior. It was such a calculated move. She didn't outright accuse me of a crime, just threw enough suspicion into the air to make my workplace nervous. Luckily, my boss knew me well enough to see through the nonsense, but the fact that I had to sit there and defend myself against Karen's lies made my blood boil. She had failed to steal my car. Now she was trying to ruin my life. By the time I got home that evening, I had one goal: to make sure Karen knew I wasn't going to be intimidated. I wasn't about to let some HOA tyrant make me live in fear. But the moment I turned the corner into the complex parking lot, my stomach dropped. My parking spot was empty. For a brief second, panic flashed through me, but my car was still there, just not in my spot, A bright orange violation notice was stuck to my windshield, and my car had been moved to the street outside the complex. I snatched the paper and scanned it, barely believing what I was reading. Due to multiple complaints, your parking privileges have been revoked. Your vehicle has been relocated. Any future violations may result in towing. HOA management, The rage that burned through me was almost blinding. Karen. Of course it was Karen. She must have gone straight to the HOA board, spinning her fake victim story to get my parking privileges revoked, and the worst part? The HOA was already on her side. She had them wrapped around her finger. She couldn't steal my car again, so she did the next best thing: she made sure I couldn't park it. Now, my car was sitting out in the open, vulnerable. And the next morning, that's when I saw the damage. The second I stepped outside, my stomach twisted at the sight of long, deep scratches running across the side of my car. Not just random vandalism, deliberate, jagged marks, as if someone had taken a key and dragged it across the paint with pure rage, And carved into the driver's side door, in large, uneven letters, was a message. Selfish pig. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. This wasn't just some random act of vandalism. This was personal. Karen was escalating. I forced myself to take deep breaths, even as my hands curled into fists at my sides. She wanted me to explode. She wanted me to lose control and lash out so she could turn the narrative back on me. I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. Instead, I pulled out my phone and snapped multiple photos of the damage from different angles. Then, without wasting a second, I turned around and marched straight to the leasing office. Ms. Carter, the receptionist, looked immediately uncomfortable when she saw me walk in. She knew. She wasn't stupid. She knew exactly what was happening, but Karen had influence here, and she was clearly afraid of getting caught in the middle. I didn't give her the chance to brush me off. I need to see the security footage from last night, I said, keeping my voice steady. Now. She hesitated. Ryan, you know I can't just. This is a police matter. I cut her off. Either I get the footage, or I file another report and let the cops demand it instead. That seemed to push her over the edge. With a deep sigh, she nodded toward the back office. Give me a few hours. I'll see what I can find. It wasn't immediate justice, but it was something. I spent the rest of the day forcing myself to go about my routine, but the anger simmered beneath the surface, refusing to fade. It wasn't just about my car anymore. It was the principle of it. Karen wasn't just trying to get what she wanted, she was trying to destroy me for daring to say no. I kept reminding myself that people like her always push too far. They think they're untouchable until they make one crucial mistake. And 2 days later, that mistake finally came. I was at work when my phone buzzed. It was a voicemail from Ms. Carter. "Ryan, it's me. I reviewed the footage, and, well, you need to come in." I was out the door in minutes. When I arrived, Ms. Carter barely met my eyes as she led me to the small security office in the back. She hit play. And there, as clear as day, was Karen. The footage showed her marching toward my car in the middle of the night, glancing around, then pulling something from her pocket. A key. A knife. Something sharp ***. And then? She started carving. Red-handed. Caught in the act. I wasted no time forwarding the footage to the officer who had handled my stolen car case. Within hours, I got the call. The police were paying Karen a visit. I stood by my window, watching as a patrol car pulled up in front of her unit. 2 officers stepped out and knocked firmly on her door. The second she answered, I saw her entire body tense. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I could see the way she gestured wildly, how her face turned red as she pointed toward my apartment, no doubt trying to spin another ridiculous story. Then, the officers showed her the footage. Her reaction was priceless. She went from denial to outrage in seconds, shaking her head furiously, her hands flying as she tried to argue. But this time, it wasn't working. The officers handed her a citation, possibly even a misdemeanor charge for property damage, depending on how I wanted to proceed. She snatched the paper from their hands and slammed the door shut, but I could already tell. She had finally lost. The moment Karen slammed her door shut, I knew she was fuming. It was the first time she had faced actual consequences, and people like her didn't take that well. I could almost hear her pacing, thinking of ways to spin this into another victim narrative, another poor single mother being unfairly targeted by the system. But for once, her words didn't matter. She had been caught. On camera. There was no way out of this one. And I wasn't about to let her get away with it. The next morning, I followed up with the officer handling my case, making it clear that I wanted to press charges for the vandalism. The damage to my car wasn't just cosmetic, it was deep, the kind of thing that would cost thousands to fix. Karen had pushed her luck too far. And now? She was finally going to pay for it. That afternoon, I received an email from the HOA, requesting my cooperation in de-escalating neighborhood conflicts. The audacity made me laugh out loud. After everything Karen had done, they were asking me to back down? I didn't bother replying. Instead, I forwarded the email directly to the police. If the HOA wanted to protect Karen, they could deal with the legal mess coming her way. That evening, I saw her outside, pretending to check her mail. Her face was tight, her movements stiff with barely restrained anger. For the first time, she didn't make eye contact. No smugness. No fake, condescending smiles. She had lost. But that didn't mean she was done scheming. The next morning, I was halfway to my car when I heard a familiar voice, shaky, hesitant. Hey. I turned, expecting another confrontation, but instead, I saw Tyler, her son, standing a few feet away, shifting uncomfortably on his feet. For a second, I braced myself for some entitled speech, another demand, another guilt trip. But he looked embarrassed. Maybe even ashamed. I wanted to say I didn't ask for any of this, he muttered, avoiding my gaze. I never wanted your car. I never told my mom to do any of that. He sighed, rubbing a hand over his face, I just wanted to stay out of it. His words caught me off guard. I had spent weeks seeing Karen as the villain, assuming her son was just another entitled extension of her narcissism, but now? Looking at him, I realized he wasn't like her. He was just a kid trapped in her mess, trying to navigate the world with a mother who saw everything as a battle to win. I don't know why she's like this, he admitted, frustration clear in his voice. Asterisk, she always needs to be right. Always needs to take something from someone else. And if she doesn't get what she wants, she loses her mind. Asterisk. He sighed again, finally meeting my eyes. Asterisk, I'm moving out soon. As soon as I turn 18, I'm done with this. I just wanted you to know, I'm not her. And I'm sorry she did all that to you. Asterisk. For a second, I didn't know what to say. The anger I had carried for weeks, the frustration, the exhaustion, the hatred for Karen's entitlement, it was still there, but hearing Tyler speak, I realized it wasn't just me who had suffered because of her. Her own son had spent his whole life cleaning up her messes, trying to escape the chaos she created. I nodded slowly. I get it, I said. Asterisk, and I don't blame you for any of this. Asterisk. The relief on his face was immediate. I watched as he muttered a quiet, thanks, before turning and walking back inside. And as I stood there, the realization hit me. Karen would never change. She would never admit she was wrong. But Tyler still had a chance. That night, I saw Karen one last time. She was sitting outside, pretending to be lost in thought, but I could see it in her posture, asterisk asterisk the bitterness, the resentment, the quiet rage of someone who couldn't stand being held accountable, asterisk asterisk. She refused to look at me. Refused to acknowledge that she had lost. And that was fine. She was no longer my problem. For the first time in weeks, I felt at peace as I stepped into my apartment that evening, a strange sense of relief settled over me. It wasn't just that Karen had finally faced consequences for what she did, it was the realization that she had no more control over my life. She had thrown everything she could at me, from trying to steal my car, to getting me in trouble at work, to vandalizing my property, and yet, in the end, she had lost. There was no more fight left to have. No more schemes for her to pull. She had officially burned every bridge. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I wasn't checking my car every morning expecting more damage, or wondering what ridiculous complaints she would file next. The entitled neighbor, the HOA tyrant, the woman who thought she could take whatever she wanted, she was still here, but she was powerless. And that was the best victory I could have asked for. Over the next few days, the energy around the apartment complex felt different. People weren't avoiding eye contact with me anymore, like they had been afraid to get involved. A few even went out of their way to chat, asking if I was okay, subtly hinting that they had seen everything unfold. And Karen? She kept to herself, seething in silence. No more loud complaints. No more smug remarks. She had been publicly humiliated, fined, and exposed for what she was. She wasn't about to draw more attention to herself, not when she knew people were finally seeing through her lies. The real moment of closure, though, came unexpectedly. A few days later, I saw Tyler packing up his things. A couple of suitcases, some boxes, an old backpack thrown over his shoulder. He was leaving. For good. I caught his eye as he passed by, and he gave me a small nod. No words needed. He had done what his mother never could, he had learned. He was getting out before he became like her. And as I watched him go, I realized something. Karen would never change. She would always find a new target, a new way to manipulate, a new story to spin where she was the victim. But the difference now? It wouldn't be my problem. So, to anyone dealing with their own version of Karen, a neighbor who makes life unbearable, an HOA that plays favorites, someone who thinks rules don't apply to them, my advice? Stand your ground. People like her win when you give in. But when you don't, they self-destruct. And that's the real victory. What's the worst experience you've ever had with a Karen or an HOA? Let's see who had it worse. Drop your story below.